Auburn is in a perfect spot when it comes to landing their next high school quarterback.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Lindsay, Crosby of thebarnauburn.com, as well as a million other places, hanging out with us. What does Auburn do after Byrum Brown at the quarterback position? What do we expect for this season? All that coming up on today's show. But want to start with the pretty solid position that we find ourselves in when you look at Auburn pursuing multiple studs, but I think two kind of leaning hardest to Auburn. Adams, Israel Abrams, and Israel Abrams has definitely gotten more of the chatter on the show. So we'll start with Adams from Antioch, Tennessee. He's visiting Kentucky. He's visited other places, but it does seem like, Lindsay, Auburn was an early favorite publicly for him, and it doesn't seem like Auburn has backed off of recruiting him despite a lot of the projections for Israel Abrams.
Yeah, and if you think about what he does, it makes sense that Auburn would have been on him early under Hugh Freeze. He plays an RPO-heavy thing in high school, and it makes sense that this current staff would also be in on him because per scouting reports, I read 247 and things like that. Really, really good touch and in accuracy in intermediate balls, can do a little bit better in the deeper third, can move around in the pocket, can extend with his legs. A lot of things that you need from a Golesh offense in your quarterback besides just pure running ability. Like, it makes sense. He kind of overlaps with both staffs. He does different things that they both like, but it makes sense Auburn would have been in on him early. I always love the multi-sport guys too, guys that play more than one thing. He played basketball as well. And I understand the value. We saw this with some of the other guys we've recruited in the past, Walker White and guys like that. I understand the value of getting the guy in early so that you can kind of build a class around him. I still have a little question about how useful it really is to recruit a high school quarterback. But I think if nothing else, it helps you build that class and it gives you numbers in the room.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you have to have one and just hope that it works out, especially when the situation that Auburn's in, as far as it's not obvious who the guy after Byrum Brown is. And in fact, he may not even be on the roster. But when you look at Adams' size, 6'2", 180 is what 247 has him at. Israel Abrams, 6'4", 187. If I had to guess, Lindsay, I would assume that the staff prefers Abrams over Adams. I think his fit is a little bit more. I think they both have incredibly high ceilings, but I would say that Abrams probably has a higher ceiling and probably a little bit higher of a floor just based off of, I've watched some of their tape as far as their huddle highlights, which isn't much because it's highlights, but just also talking to folks that are kind of in the player eval world. Both of these guys are desired for sure, but it does seem like Abrams is a little bit higher, maybe on the same tier, but I would say that Abrams is probably higher within that tier than Adams. And it also, when these guys put in these RPMs or crystal balls, and we saw, I believe it was Wiltfong put in an RPM prediction for Abrams, as well as a national rivals rider, which I forget his name, but regardless, those both came in, I believe, the same day, which leads me to think, okay, there's something that happened here that they believe that this is either close to done or actually, in fact, done behind the scenes. And then just looking at that, a few days ago, news came out of Adams, excuse me. I told you one of us was going to mess up Abrams and Adams. It was me. Yep. But a report of Adams visiting Kentucky and kind of putting that on their radar. Like, is that in response to that? Was that going to happen anyway? I think it's easy to speculate, and there's an argument for both ways. But if I had to guess, I think the staff would prefer Israel Abrams. And just, you guys are tuning in for our opinion on things. I would prefer Abrams over Adams. But if you get either of these guys, I'd be happy with either of them.
Yeah, I think it's really just getting one of them, period. But when you look at what Abrams does, and again, some of the scouting reports and things like that, being a guy with a really like 6'4" and a very over the top release point. That's something where, it's easier to get balls out. It's harder to have balls batted down at the line. You can see, some trajectory on a guy with good arm strength for throwing the ball downfield. We know that that's part of what this staff does. He didn't run for nearly as much in his junior year of high school as Adams did. It's so hard. It's going to be so hard on this, Adams and Abrams. But you can see that like he has enough mobility to work in the offense of Alex Golesh, although he obviously would not run as much as Byrum Brown. I don't think there's a quarterback in the recruiting class that would run as much as Byrum Brown, simply because he's a unique one of one, and you can't try to replace him. You can just find a good fit for what you want to do conceptually.
Right. And we've seen his offense kind of be moldable to some extent. I mean, we saw that with when Hendon Hooker was his quarterback at Tennessee. Hendon could run the ball,
but that wasn't his strength. Yeah.
Not his strength, and wasn't his first option either. They wanted to throw the ball downfield when it made sense. And you may see Byrum still continue to do that with this transition to the SEC. And look, like, let's also think about this from, yes, Byrum is getting paid to play quarterback at Auburn. No question about it. His NIL deal, probably very handsome and well-deserved, correct? Yeah. But let's don't kid ourselves. Like, sure, he's benefiting from that, but he also wants to put tape together to say, yes, I'm a draftable quarterback next year. And so do some of those conversations happen with, look at this running back room. Yeah, let's use your arm. Let's show that you're a proven passer. Yes, we'll run you when we need to, but does he need to run the ball 15 times a game in the SEC with those running backs standing next to him? My guess is no, but I also think that Byrum Brown and Alex Golesh are going to do whatever it takes to win. And if the flow of the game or the game plan calls for him to call his own number 20 times, but it wins the football game, yeah, they are going to do that. But I don't think every game plan is going to ask that of this offense.
Yeah, it's this comes up in college baseball a lot, right? And it's like, we want to develop these guys.
It took 7 minutes and 28 seconds for you to get there. That's longer than with the weekend Butch Thompson's Tigers had. I that's longer than I would have guessed for you to tie it to college baseball.
Yeah, that's like, they want to develop these players, make them into better versions, and get them into the league. But Butch will say, like, my job is to win baseball games. And there's times you have to make decisions that are short-term beneficial for that goal and focused more on that goal than the overall end point of where that player's career is going to end up. And you could see that with Brown. If you need it, it's like, hey, we need you to go take over this game. He can do that. He's shown the ability to do that at a lower level of competition. He's a heavy runner. He can break tackles, all that good stuff. But I think it's something like that. I do like the fact that you can mold and adapt this offense. It's felt at times where there are certain teams, certain staffs, certain schemes, you have to have this kind of guy. And it does feel like with Golesh, there's a lot of different things they can do. To your point with Hooker, they can, he has the ability to run, but they can focus more on downfield passing and things like that. Brown, you could run him a little more, but he still threw for a ton of yards last year, 3,100 yards, I think, 28 touchdowns. I mean, he can do everything. Question is, the next guy, can he eventually be at the point where he can do everything? I do feel like Abrams has more maybe ceiling as far as what he could eventually be as a dual threat, maybe over Adams, but we'll see. We'll see. Plenty of time. Senior season still coming up.
I also think if you go back to 2023, of course, in 2024, Byrum got hurt.
Yeah.
But his stats in 2023, he still threw for 3,292 yards. He still had 809 rushing yards. Like, that's, I mean, so it wasn't just a one-year thing either, which is encouraging for sure. So I was asked a question. We're recording this Sunday afternoon. I just got home from Sunday lunch with my family, and my father asked me an interesting question, and hopefully it's just interesting and it doesn't become important, but I do want to tackle that next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inboxes overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When pressure's on, you need the right hire. It sounds like a job for sponsored jobs over at Indeed. Here's a stat that says it all. In the 1 minute I'm about to talk to you about Indeed, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all those boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of the show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on Locked On Auburn. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Today's show also brought to you by our friends at Mazda. Mazda's moving the game forward for those who show there's more to the score than what's on the screen. Lindsay, I'm throwing this to you because I want you to mention an Auburn baseball player that moved the game forward because basketball, I don't know, the amount of messages I got about this basketball team over the weekend, little unfair, but who moved the game forward this weekend?
Chase Fralick had a huge weekend, tons of hits, 2 great games behind the plate, including his first home run of the season. Looks like he's going to be a 15-homer bat, but he just, especially in game 3, just really got Auburn's offense moving to a new level of production.
Yep. Hey, Mazda puts that same passion in every model. Highlights make the real. What it takes to get there is what makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. You know, we were talking about Byrum Brown in the upcoming season because that's what people who cheer for Auburn do this time of year. You talk about the new quarterback and the excitement that comes with it. But he did ask a question. He's like, what's the backup plan? Whether, if Byrum Brown isn't that guy or, something happens to him, like he got injured during the 2024 season, like what's the backup plan? And I'm like, well, this is where the Deuce Knight situation really stinks and doesn't really make sense if you're Deuce Knight, because you look at the guys behind Byrum Brown and it's redshirt freshman and a true freshman. And, early on, we knew that Reese Brush was going to follow Alex Golesh, flipping his commitment from South Florida to Auburn. So we knew that you had the true freshman there. And then Lachlan Hewlett, as soon as the portal opened, it seemed like he was ready to flip as well, which is great, cool, whatever. Redshirt freshman quarterback in the room. And then we spent the next 2 weeks, it felt like, could have been less, talking about, okay, you still need a guy that's a little bit older to be the backup, and maybe you could pitch to him, hey, you're the guy after Byrum Brown. And that just didn't really happen. And they ended up with Tristan Tia, but still a redshirt freshman.
3 games.
To me, I don't think there's this massive divide between him and Lachlan Hewlett, but Tristan Tia has played and looked okay in the limited time that he played at Oregon State. But to me, if something happens to Byrum Brown, I do think Auburn is in trouble here.
Yeah, I remember I was watching a documentary about Peyton Manning, and they were talking to one of his coaches, and I'll self-censor this, but somebody asked one of his coaches, like, why don't you guys practice these 2 other guys, like his 2 backups, more? And he was like, oh, if Peyton goes down, we're effed, and like we don't practice that. We have no shot if Peyton goes down, and we're not going to practice that. And
yeah, we all remember Curtis Painter throwing away that perfect season for Indy.
Yeah, like if you don't if they didn't have Peyton Manning, they were in trouble. I'm not saying Byrum Brown is Peyton Manning. I'm saying the difference between Byrum Brown and the rest of the room is equivalent to the difference in Peyton Manning and the rest of his rooms while he was in Indianapolis. So
sure,
what you would have to do,
and Denver as well.
Denver as well, yeah. You'd have
unless you're a Brock Osweiler guy. I think he was the backup that year.
Yeah. He
is like 7 feet tall.
He was like 7 feet tall. Yeah. I'm glad that's the one thing we both know about him. Because he was super tall. You really would have to just lean into that running back room that you mentioned. You'd have to just, be running backs all the time, figure out which of these quarterbacks could do enough in the passing game to keep somebody honest. But you would significantly lower, I feel like, both the ceiling and the floor of the offense to the point where you'd have to legitimately question what's going to be the outcome here in year one. I mean, it is just incredibly hard in college football and pro football too to replace your starting quarterback if you lose them.
Yeah. And Daryl and I've talked about this, and it got some pushback, but like paying multiple quarterback, if you're getting a guy much older than Tristan Tia, that you're almost promising, a solid chance at a competition to be the guy after Brown. I mean, that does sound more expensive than a guy like Tristan Tia coming over to be a backup. We assume he'll be QB2. I think he's going to have to earn it. I don't think he'll be given QB2, but I do think he'll end up as QB2. I think that option, the Tia option, is cheaper than what the ideal option would be. Ashton Daniels 2.0, if you will. But this is a team that, sounds like Auburn spent around $5 million more on their roster this year than they did last year, based off of folks that I talked to and folks that would certainly know. And so was it a situation where, okay, like that just didn't make sense. It didn't make sense for them to go that route, which from a money standpoint, like, yeah, I would rather them have brought in, some of these offensive tackles than a better QB2, or, one of these edge guys that they brought in, or like retaining Jared Smith or bringing in Deshaun Womack. I mean, some of these positions that are going to, we hope, absolutely make an impact. So I wonder what those conversations looked like. They had to weigh the pros and cons of that, because I do think the pitch for QB2 at Auburn would be appealing, because, hey, you're a backup to a guy who runs the ball a lot and was hurt 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And you would be the favorite probably as the incumbent following this season. So it's just kind of an interesting spot to be in. And it doesn't seem like, or the other side of that coin is they really like Tristan Tia or Lachlan Hewlett, which is the best case scenario here.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the part where the comparison between the pro and the college thing break down, right? Because in the pros, you knew who Curtis Painter was. You knew who Brock Osweiler was. In college, Lachlan Hewlett, Tristan Tia, whatever, they're more of an unknown quantity, right? You have what they did in high school. There's what they did what's what Tia did in his, I think he made one start, has appeared in 3 games or whatever. Maybe that there's something they see there where the drop off is not as severe versus had they paid X amount more to get a senior or a junior out of the portal. And that's the part we don't really know. I do feel like we just talked in the last segment about the adaptability of Alex Golesh and how he does different things with his quarterbacks. Maybe this is a vote of confidence in each one of these guys has some physical tools that we like, and we're confident that if we have to go to one of them in season, we can adjust and modify what we do to put them in a position to be successful, which I have to be honest, is a nice change from what we've seen recently, where it's like, hey, this is the offense, this is what we are running, and we're just going to call the same thing for everybody who goes out there. But I do think it sucks that, Deuce didn't have a shot to maybe be that guy. We'll get to that. I know.
Yeah, it just doesn't. I don't know. I kind of wonder if he regrets it. If I'm going to be honest with you, kind of wonder if he regrets it. Because he loves to play games on his Instagram, and there's Auburn stuff on there, but no Ole Miss. It's just.
Well, I hope he enjoys playing games on Instagram, because he's not going to play games in real life. With Tristan Chambliss getting eligibility for one more season. So enjoy the Instagram games. It's all the games you're playing.
Dang. All right. Let's jump into what does Auburn do after this season now when you look at the current snapshot of this quarterback room. That's next, right here on Locked on Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. Lindsay, Crosby, and they've got some stuff going on with the NBA Finals. If you ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person, FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered into a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience for going to the NBA NBA Finals. I'm trying to look. The Oklahoma City Thunder, massive favorites to win. That's where my brain went. So you can get on the action at FanDuel.com. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Today's show also brought to you by our friends at Alumni Hall. Can you imagine buying Auburn gear anywhere else? Lindsay Crosby.
Listen, I have a ton of Auburn gear, and the only place I get it, Alumni Hall. They have a wall of hats.
Yes.
They have all kind of sports-specific stuff.
Yes.
And not only can you buy it online, but if you are in one of 3 lucky cities, Auburn, Black, and Huntsville, they have a physical location that you can go into and you can put your hands on this merchandise. You can feel it. You can know that it has the luck, the athletics luck before you buy it.
Yep. And of course, online at alumnihall.com as well. Thank you to Alumni Hall for partnering with Locked On Auburn. Final few minutes on today's edition of Locked On Auburn. Given the current snapshot and situation of this quarterback room, Byrum Brown, of course, the guy, Tristan Tia, Lachlan Hewlett, both redshirt freshmen, and then Reese Brush, a true freshman on this roster. Obviously, the quarterbacks that we talked about at the start of this show, Andre Adams, Israel Abrams, I think one of them will be in Auburn's 2026 class. Mm-hmm. And so after Byrum Brown, one of them will have a shot. I don't know if either of those guys are like, you got to start them as a true freshman type guys. As much as I like them, I just don't think that's what you're getting with those guys. So it leads me to think, like, okay, in a perfect world where you keep all of these guys on the roster, Tia, Hewlett, Brush, and then we'll dream and say Abrams for a second. Unless they see something in Tia or Hewlett that absolutely blows them away, or maybe they play more than we envision, whatever happens where they are in a situation where they can prove to the staff that they are worthy to be Auburn's next starting quarterback going into a season, that'd be great. But I do think it's more likely that they look to the portal for the guy after Brown. And then depending on the eligibility situation, do they then pivot to a Tia or Hewlett after that, or an Abrams or Adams, depending on, how the 2027 class rolls in. But I think that's going to be the most likely scenario right now. Is that correct? I think I mentioned 2026 class just a second ago for Adams and Abrams, but obviously that would be the 2027 recruiting class. My apologies there.
Yeah, I think it's, if you don't have like one of the top recruits out of the in the country in your class at quarterback, then the default in this new age of college football has to be, you assume it's going to be a portal guy as probably your favorite. Like, look at the class in the portal this last time. Sam Levitt, Brandon Sorsby, Drew Mestermaker, DJ Lagway, Dylan Raiola, Darian Mensah, who's on Longstreet, like a ton of really good players, Byrum Brown, change teams, all following the money, but going for starting opportunities. And then you have Deuce Knight, who went to sit on the bench behind a 37-year-old quarterback. But it's hard for me to say any recruit out of high school. Like, if Deuce Knight didn't have a realistic shot at being the quarterback last year at Auburn as a 5-star recruit, it's hard for me to say that any given recruit in this high school class is going to automatically be a candidate to be the guy, simply because that's just not the way college football works nowadays.
Right. I do think Golesh and the staff's goal is to get away from the portal, but I think that's going to take time. I think it's going to take time of getting guys in, keeping them here, and then obviously developing them. So as far as, these first few seasons, like obviously it'll be Brown this year. I think the guy after that's not on the team yet, which is exciting and nerve-wracking, I think, at the same time.
Yeah, and then there's always the question. The big thing for me when you look at those portal guys, do you grab a guy who wasn't starting at an equivalent level program, or do you grab a guy at a lower level who was producing and doing well? We've seen Auburn try both under Hugh Freeze. They brought in somebody who was a 5-star recruit that was not the starter. He didn't work out. Now we're seeing Auburn under a different head coach go get a guy producing at a lower level. To me, that's the bigger question over do you start a transfer guy or a high school recruited, a prep recruit? Simply because I still don't know which one's the best option. Do you go get a guy,
Well,
who's
I mean, personally,
level?
I hope they only get guys who actually have production now.
Yeah.
I'm so over the previous stuff. I'm so over it.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of teams are kind of in that same boat. They don't mind grabbing a depth guy. Like Tristan Tia is a depth guy from that situation of he was a backup at a Power 4 program, and now he's your backup.
Kind of. Yeah, right.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. But your starter is a guy who produced at a lower level, and that's probably the right way to do it. But I still feel like there's teams. It's really clear to me if Ole Miss wasn't able to get Chambliss done, their plan was to take Deuce Knight and have Deuce Knight probably battle to be the quarterback. And they were banking on a guy who made one college start, and other than that was like barely played
in 2 games, right? That one in Ball State. You know any fun facts about Ball State?
Yes, I do know that the entire campus, every building is round. I also know that they are not a state.
That's correct. That's correct. Cool. All right. So that's kind of our thoughts on the quarterback situation at Auburn right now. Lindsay, Crosby, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
I'm on social media at Crosby Baseball, the Auburn baseball stuff, the barnauburn.com and the Barn Baseball Show, as well as we have a recap in this feed right here from Sunday morning, recapping the weekend sweep over not a state, Youngstown State. And then you went to Brave stuff, bravestoday.com and the Braves Today podcast.
And of course, we'll be live right after Auburn takes on Cincinnati tomorrow night. I think that's a 6:00 first pitch. So we'll go live as soon as that's done. And then I'll drop on the auto feed just like they do for football and basketball. So exciting stuff there. Please like the video. Please subscribe if you're tuned in on audio. Please subscribe and leave us a review. Helps the show out a ton. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked on Auburn.